Welcome back to another G Suite for Education tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at Google Forms. This is a great way to do online evaluations, worksheets, or things like that. You can even use them for surveys and other information. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so when we first open up Google Form, you'll see that we've got the option up here in the top left corner to name it. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a quick name. And you'll see that it automatically updates the title for us. You can add a description. This is the description. And then, of course, we can jump right in with the questions. Now, the first thing that you want to take a look at is your consideration for what you're going to be using this for. If you're going to be using it for collecting, just like a simple worksheet or something like that, and the person that you are working with is within G Suite for Education, meaning they have an email address that ends in whatever your organizational email would be, then what you can do is go up here to Settings in the corner, and you can tell it to collect email addresses. Now, this is a really great way to be able to automatically know who submitted the information. However, if they are outside of, like you can see, I'm part of Ware Academy. If they're outside of it, I don't want to restrict that. So I can make sure that anyone is able to access it. And I don't necessarily need to collect email addresses either, because I can add a question in the form itself for them to fill in their name or something along those lines, so you can get that information another way. If you do want it to be limited to those that are in your organization, let's say you're doing a middle school classroom or even a high school, then you want to restrict that to your organization. You can limit how many responses they can do. You can allow them to edit it after they've submitted it. And of course, you can automatically collect email addresses. Once you're done, I'm going to go ahead and not do any of these things. And I'm going to look at the presentation. Now, the presentation allows us to control how it appears to them. A progress bar, again, is just kind of personal preference. And then if you wanted, let's say you have a quiz or you know that students are going to be next to each other, you can have it automatically shuffle questions. And of course, you can have the link to submit another response if you're not limiting it to one response or another. The confirmation here is what they're going to see once they have submitted it. So if you have a personalized message you want to do, you could change it right here. If you want to be able to assign points and values to each of the assignments or the questions, you can turn on Make This a Quiz, and that allows you to automatically set scores and things of that nature. I'm going to turn that on just so I can show you how this works, but of course it's up to you depending on how you're going to be doing that. So I'm going to click Save, and now we'll jump back into the form. The first thing I want to do is start creating a question. So this question, I'm going to select it, and you'll notice that as you're modifying that question, you get a lot more options available. What you have underneath it is going to be dependent on the choice that you have on this drop-down menu. And basically the ones I would recommend if you're not familiar with it: short answer, paragraph, multiple choice checkboxes, or you could do maybe a file upload. A short answer, of course, is going to give them a little bit of space to write maybe a sentence, but it's not expected to be able to write in a paragraph. That obviously would be the paragraph option, and this will expand as they write so they can see everything that they're typing. The difference between multiple choice and checkboxes is that multiple choice limits the student to only one answer. So if you were to type in a question, who was the first president? And then, of course, you can see that it even made a suggestion. We'll choose George Washington as one. I'm going to hit enter. Let's say Michael Jackson, another answer, and Elon Musk, whatever. Now we've got three options, so that the multiple choice answer is only going to allow them to choose one of those answers. Now, if you were to go to checkboxes, this would be more akin to a question like, which service are you familiar with? And you might have something like Twitter. You might have something like YouTube. and perhaps Twitch streaming, and so on and so forth. And now what they can do, because you've chosen checkboxes, is they can choose 1, 2, or all of the answers, depending on how many you have, in order to answer this question. File upload is if you were going to give them a place in your Google Drive in order to share a file. Maybe they drew a picture and they took a photo of it. They're going to attach it to this form and submit it to you that way. And you can see right here, it will be that they will be required to sign into Google when they upload files. So of course this is going to be limited to students that are within your organization. Date and time are useful if you need, maybe you're doing a form and you want them to be able to answer a specific date. When do you want to schedule a meeting? What day would be good for this, or things like that. This gives them the option to just simply click the icon and it's going to bring up a calendar view. The time option is very similar, where instead of giving you a date, it's going to give you a specific time. So of course you might use these in conjunction with each other, where you have a date and time for recommended appointment, or things of that nature. If you were doing a question like, what year did Christopher Columbus discover America, you probably would not want to use date, because that's going to require that they enter in a month, day, and year. Which may not be the answer you're looking for. In that case, you'd probably just want to choose something like a short answer for that. Now, in addition to these options, you'll notice that as you move the mouse around, you occasionally get these image icons. Now, this allows you to attach pictures and things directly into your question. So, for example, if I was going to say, what does the time say? And I chose this. Now I can do a Google search. You can see there's a lot of different options. I can even have the camera take a picture of it. If I did a Google image and I say clock, you can see that I could simply choose this one and hit insert, and it's going to insert a picture of this clock for the student to be able to read. Now if I select the image, I can of course shrink it down a little bit because that might be a bit big. And then I have the answer here, so they can read that, fill in the answer, and off you go. Now, if I were to choose, actually let's create a new question, because of course we're not just going to have one question on there. So this menu over here on the right side, I'm going to choose Add Question, and you can see that it adds the next one underneath. If the options that you want them to be able to choose from are not text values, but let's say we were doing another clock, and it says, which image shows, what would that be, 1:15 p.m., right? Now here, at the end of the option, I can choose to insert an image, and I would do something very similar. I could type in clock, do a search, get a completely different selection of images. Go figure. Oh, that says Clockwork Orange. That's why. Apologize for that. So I'll choose this image again, hit insert, wait for it to come up. Now when I add another option, I can choose another clock. Here's another one that looks similar. And you can see that right there, option 1, option 2, it's going to give them the option to choose whichever image is correct. So it doesn't necessarily require that the person be able to read, or minimal reading. Unfortunately, I have not seen any way that it would actually read the questions to us, although you could probably get like a screen reader in Windows or Mac OS or something to do that for you. So let's say that we want to score this. Remember, I turned on the quiz option. Down here at the bottom where it says answer key is the option for you to be able to do that. So I'm going to choose answer key, and notice now this is what it's going to display for me. You can see the question, which image shows 1:15 p.m. It says option 1, it has this image, option 2 has this image. Up here in the top right corner of this question, it shows how many points. So for example, maybe I was doing a 5-question form and I only wanted them to be worth 1 point, then I can just set that to 1. Or I can type in and it's going to be 4 questions and each one is worth a 25 point because I'm doing a scale from 0 to 100. The world is your oyster. You may choose whichever you would like. Now, with that, you'll notice that there's not much else. Well, what I would do here is it says choose the correct answer. So in this case, 115 is going to be this guy right here. I'm going to choose that, and notice it highlights it telling me that that is the correct answer. So if the student submits it and they have chosen this, they'll earn 25 points. So it's as simple as that. You can also add an answer feedback. So if you wanted to be able to give them feedback if they got the wrong answer, or give them feedback if they got the right answer, you can choose to fill in that information. If you don't even want to put in something like that, you could also link a YouTube video, or you could send them to a website. Maybe it's a complex math question and they didn't quite understand Pythagorean's theorem, but you have a great YouTube video that you want them to, explain. If they get the incorrect answer, you can link that YouTube video directly to it. So, for example, if you were to type in the Pythagorean theorem, you might find something along those lines, and you can say select that, and now that video is going to be linked directly into if they choose the incorrect answer. So you've definitely got a lot of different options and things. So organizing your form is one of the most important things about this. And if you plan on having a lot of questions, and I mean a lot of questions, let's say you have like 20 or 30 questions, then organizing it by just adding question after question down the list could become a bit overwhelming for them. So a great way to organize that is actually to come down here and choose to add a section. Now what this does is we have section 1, and you can see that we've got our questions in here. Now section 2, we can title that something different. Math questions. Give it a description and start inserting questions into section 2. The result is that when they get to the end of section 1, rather than go on to section 2, they're going to have a button that says next, and that will move them on to the next view in their form. When they're on the next one, they'll have a back button, a next button, or a submit button, depending on how many sections you have. So you definitely have some options there. The menu or the option to add questions, import questions, or things like that moves with you depending on where you are selecting. So if I go back to this first question, you can see that that moved up with me. If I want to insert an image, and I'm just going to do fuzzy bunny. Wait for Google image search to pop up. So I'm going to choose this image of a bunny and insert it. You'll notice that it adds it almost like it's its own question. This would be useful if you have maybe a more complex image or even a document or something like that that you want to insert. Give it a title. Fuzzy bunny questions. And then you could have a series of questions related to that. So that might be a way to organize it. You can also do the same thing with adding a video. Watch the video, answer these questions. And it's going to be a similar format. So if I insert this and I put in something like how a hard drive works. I might choose this one here, select it, and I could say something like, watch the video and answer the questions. Now underneath that, I would start inserting questions related to that video. So it gives you a lot of control and options for that. All right, so we've gone through, we've created our form, we've got it organized and structured. We've come up here, we've chosen some themes, we've adjusted the background color depending on which information. We can change and do decorative fonts if we were doing different types of forms, surveys, what have you. We've got it ready to go, but we want to make sure that it's visible and easy to understand. So right up here with this eyeball, we can click on that to preview it. And this is going to give you the exact view that your students or users are going to actually be presented with. So you can see I'm going to scroll down here and notice section 2 isn't visible because I've got this next button. I click on that and it takes me to section 2, and there you can see that submit button and the back button as well. To get out of that, you'll notice that it simply created another tab. So I'm just going to close this tab and go back to my editing view. Now when you're finished with it and you click send, you're going to have some options about how you share this. And this is really critical to understand because you can simply email it out to people. If you wanted to blast it out to a bunch of people, you can share it that way. You'll notice that right up here in the corner, you've got an option to share it from Facebook. You can share it on Twitter if you want to do that as well. But in most classroom environments, you probably want to be able to control it a little bit better than that. So the easiest thing to do is either choose the link here, or if you go into Google Classroom, you can attach this as a link directly in Classroom by looking through your Google Drive. Which brings me to my next portion to understand is, where is this getting saved? Obviously, it's in Google Drive somewhere, but just like all of our other documents, spreadsheets, Google Slides, you have this option up here in the top left corner which says Move to Folder. And when I click on that, you can see that it brings up my Google Drive, allowing me to sort and organize where I want this to be viewed. So this would be a great way to kind of organize it into folders, perhaps if it needs to be shared online with certain people or people that don't need to sign into Google. You might move it into a shared folder or things of that nature. For me, I'm going to move it into this folder here, and I'm going to hit move here, and notice it says this item will be visible to everyone who can see this folder. So of course, if I've publicly shared the folder, this form will now be public. Once I've moved it, I'm going to get the example form has been moved to that location, and it's ready to go. I can now link it in my Google site. I can attach it to Google Classroom. I can email it out if I wanted to do the email link. If I want to just send the link itself in another email, I can do that as well. This last option here is if you wanted to embed this form in a web page. I'm not going to go over how to do embedding. We'll use embedding HTML for another tutorial, but that is another option for you. Finally, we need to understand what happens when people submit an answer. And that right here is going to be viewed under the Responses tab. You can turn the form on and off right here, whether or not it's accepting responses or it's not accepting responses. If this is a timed form and it has to be due by a certain point, and after that they just don't have any options, or because you've made it public you don't want to keep getting responses from it, this would be a great way to turn it off. I'll leave it on for now, and when you get a response, what's going to happen is you're going to have a series of breakdowns based on the answers that were submitted. It's going to break it down into showing you comparisons between how many people submitted this answer versus this answer. You're going to get an evaluation of how many responses, what were the averages, all sorts of information, probably a lot more than you necessarily need. However, it could point to things like, well, everybody consistently kept choosing between these two answers. Maybe I worded the question wrong, or maybe, a consideration for things of that nature. If you want to be able to push the responses themselves out to an easier format to read, you do have this link right here, which will create a spreadsheet. Don't do it until you have all of the responses you want, because this is a one-time operation. If I click Create Spreadsheet now, I'm going to get a blank spreadsheet because no one has responded to this form yet. But once you have everything, you can hit Create Spreadsheet, and now you have a spreadsheet of the breakdown of all of the submitted answers and things. Probably not as useful if you're just doing a simple worksheet or a quiz or something like that. But if you were to do a survey with parents, that might become pretty useful to be able to, organize it, and then you can do sums and all sorts of fancy stuff with Google Sheets, which will be another email. In addition to that, if you click that little 3-dot menu next to it, you can see I can have a response destination, which would be where does it go. If I wanted to get email notifications for new responses, I could check that. And basically each time somebody submits it, it's going to email me saying somebody has submitted a response to this form. And then, of course, if I need to export it to some other application, I can download the comma-separated values file. Or if I really I've got garbage, people are responding, and I'm not going to accept any of it, I can hit delete all responses and then send it again. I hope this has been useful for you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to question or comment below, or you can contact me directly, and I will see you in the next video.